I love sharing stories from runners just like you and me who accomplish incredible things with their running. We've done this on the show before, but I was finding that our typical RC Spotlight format, where runners provide pre-recorded answers, didn't always do the story justice. That changes today though. When I heard Bethany Schuerman won the Muleskinner 50 miler in record time, and that her son actually beat her and won this race outright in his first ever ultra, I just had to invite them both on the show to tell the story for themselves. They live, train, and work together, and sometimes even raise their chickens together. We'll come back to that one, but not before you hear about how this mother-son duo both won the same 50 miler, what their training looked like leading up to the race, and their advice for other new ultramarathoners. Bethany and TJ have a love for running that's contagious, and I'm confident after listening to this, you're going to be pumped for your next run. With that, let's get to the interview. All right, we're doing an athlete spotlight, but a little bit different this time because I have two incredible athletes with me. TJ and Bethany, how are you both doing?
Oh, we're doing great.
Doing good today.
Awesome. Did you both get in a run today?
No, this is a rest day for me. I have a 7 miler tomorrow.
I got in a little 2-mile baby run today after the gym, but I also have my long run tomorrow as well.
All right, and the topic of rest day itself could be controversial. We could have a whole episode on that over whether it means complete rest, but TJ, are you considering this your rest day?
For the most part, I mean, I did a shorter run yesterday as well before work, but 2 miles is just kind of like a maintenance day. I'm not doing anything crazy right now, training for any big races yet, so we'll see.
Well, I think that's pretty understandable given that you're each coming off not just running an ultramarathon, but winning one. Has it settled in yet?
I don't know. I'm not so sure yet. It's on to the next big race, but still feeling really accomplished. So we're going to see.
Yeah, it was, it definitely, it's settled in, but it's a whole new experience being able to share that with my son. So this is definitely the first race where the both of us ran a really strong race and ended up winning.
Yeah, so Bethany, you actually ran this same race the year before, and if I understand right, you won it that time as well. Why don't you start first? How did the race play out to get the victory, and how does it compare to when you ran it the previous year?
So this year I knew the course because last year was actually my first 50 miler. And so that was the first race that I actually used Runners Connect for my training plans, and it's gone very well. But this time the training plan was similar, only we bumped up the pace a little bit because my goal was to finish it in under 8 hours. And it was definitely more challenging this year than it was last year because I was pushing it a little faster and trying to maintain that pace. And one of the things that I wanted to do was limit the amount of time in the aid stations. Get in, get out. And the weather was perfect this year too, whereas like last year it poured for like the last 15 miles. It was miserable. So it was everything just really panned out well with the weather. The only thing I didn't like was when the top 3 guys pulled away from me early on in the race. I took that 4th place spot and held it, and I was in no man's land. I had nobody in front of me, nobody behind me, so it was kind of a little lonely. I usually prefer to either have somebody chasing me or somebody to chase.
And did you have somebody to chase the previous year when you'd won?
So I was actually chasing the guys. They were a lot closer to me, which is good to keep that pace. I had actually made a wrong turn at mile 3 because the race starts at 5 a.m. So the first 2 hours you're in the dark. And I was running with this other guy and somebody had made a wrong turn. We just followed him, and when we came up to a gate and we knew like, okay, this part of the towpath is closed, I had to turn around and, when you make a mistake like that, you kind of run angry. So I definitely picked up the pace. So after that was just like picking people off. But yeah, the guys were closer, so I could see them, and you just kind of like try to lasso them in.
All right, so TJ, you also ran this race and came away with a victory, so let's maybe fill in the story a little bit. At this turnaround point, where were you? Did you take the wrong turn as well? Was this just the people behind you? Kind of what was going on in your mind?
So I started out running first, second. I ran with a second place guy for probably the first 15 miles, and he started to peel back in pace just because he didn't think he could hold it with me. And the only time I actually got off track was I think around mile 18 or 19 before the turnaround, and the path just split into two different ways and wasn't really marked that well. So I got about a third of a mile in and realized that I don't think I'm supposed to be running on the road away from the river. So I turned around and got back right on the course. And again, you got to right yourself even if you make a wrong turn. I still had the lead at that point and got to the turnaround point without any issue.
And your mom was already a defending champion, but for yourself, did you expect to win? Did it come as a shock?
It's been a progression since planning to do a 50-mile race. At first, it was just trying to survive. Then I have to go in under 8 hours. And then once I shared that goal with my mom, I was like, all right, I cannot lose to my mom. So then it went to sub 7:30. I was even floating around the idea of a sub 7, but just time and probably speed work wasn't really there yet for me, considering it was my first ultra to do that. But we were on pace at first to go sub 7. I pulled back in the later half.
And I know you told me that you really like the half marathon distance. Had you run a full marathon before this?
I actually skipped the marathon distance for my first marathon, so I did a couple 25Ks leading up to it, and then I went straight to a 50K. So my first time running a marathon was running in a 31-mile race. So the milestone was awesome, but then I realized I had 5 miles left to go during that race, so it wasn't as awesome. So, but since then I've done a couple marathon length runs for training or just for fun and stuff like that. So I did a couple marathons before going into the 50 at least.
Just think how easy it's going to be to PR when you only have to run 26 miles on a flat course. Any plans to test that out?
I am pretty unsure about the marathon distance. We're floating around the idea of going even further in distance. World's End 100K might be in the cards for me. It's definitely in the cards for my mom at this point. Or just going all the way in and going for a 100-miler while I have this full head of steam. But we're going to have to see.
Well, no, TJ, you actually, maybe this fall, I'm going to attempt a Boston qualifying time, and it would be nice to have a pacer.
Oh, I guess I'm running a marathon now, then I don't really have much of a choice, apparently.
Is this the Philly Marathon you were telling me about?
Well, no, for next year, I wanted to do the Atlantic City Marathon, and the reason why I wanted to do that one is a couple years ago, I trained really hard for it, and it was actually, the race was on my birthday, so I was like, oh, everything's perfect. And sometimes when you're not flexible or you don't plan for the things that go wrong, it's just like a house of cards. And I went out with a pace group that was too aggressive, and it was aggressive in the wind, and then I had to fuel up sooner, and I got a side stitch, and I saw my husband at a little after mile 13. I was like, babe, I'm done. I didn't even finish that race. And I regretted it as soon as I got in the truck. And my girlfriend, I called her, and she said, Bethany, you got to sign up for another race right now. And I did, and I signed up for, the Batona 33 miler, which was in a couple weeks. And I was like, I've never run an ultra before. But my training was sufficient. And I ran my first ultra. I actually won that one by accident, and that just started this whole progression. So I have a vendetta, I guess you could say, with the Atlantic City Marathon. So if I'm going to BQ, it's going to be the one that I gave up in.
And what time do you need to BQ? I know obviously the buffer time can vary.
Oh, well, they changed it. So I was super excited because I turned 45 4 days after this last race and that puts me in another bracket. So I was like, sweet. I just padded it by 5 minutes, but then Boston came out, they changed the qualifying times again. So in order for me to actually, it's not just about qualifying, it's making sure you get into, so you really want to have that buffer. So I really need to have an 8:10 or an 8:15 pace to make sure that I get in.
TJ, is that something you're at all interested in, getting a BQ?
I don't have Boston on the list right now. I do enjoy my longer runs. I like to run slower. I did cross country for a couple years, but maybe at some point we're going to have to see. But I could definitely be a pacer for a BQ. That wouldn't be a problem.
You might get voluntold.
Yeah, that's true.
So you mentioned doing some cross country, and from my understanding, you're still studying right now. So can you maybe go a little bit into that and what your work/studies look like outside of running?
So currently I'm attending Stockton University in South Jersey. On the books, I am like a junior and a half. My cross-country days were back in high school, though. I only ran 1 year, which was my senior year. I got really into running over COVID and had all the opportunity and time in the world to train. But balancing the studies, running, and the work life really hasn't been too bad. The schools, a lot of my classes are online and such, so my schedule's pretty flexible. And sometimes you sacrifice a little sleep to get your long run in, but other than that, it's been pretty easy so far.
A little sleep. You're telling me you run at 4 a.m. most mornings, is that right?
In the summertime for all of the long runs, yeah, because the heat is just really bad in South Jersey with the humidity.
What about in the wintertime? Are you able to run in daylight, or are you still up at the crack of dawn?
Usually you're still running when it's dark outside, and then when you get done work, it's also dark outside, so you're always just running when it's dark, unfortunately.
I can relate this time of year. And Bethany, what about for you? What does your day look like balancing work with your running?
So we run a small family business, which is a 3-store group. We sell auto parts. So it's good and difficult at the same time. So like when you have people calling out, you're it. There's no backup. So you got to go in. But it also affords me the flexibility to be able to go into work a little later if I got to get a run in the morning, or to scoot out so I can get it into, the early evening. I do, TJ is my oldest. I do have an 11-year-old and a 10-year-old. So, it can be tough. It's up early, make everybody's lunches, take care of the chickens, get the run in, fly into work. But my employees appreciate it because, if I throw down like 12 or 13 before I go into work, I'm too tired to give them any trouble. So
I need to call out 2 items you just glossed over. 1, taking care of your chickens, and 2, flying into work. Can we unpack both of those?
You could definitely go into the chicken. She's the chicken lady. Go ahead.
Yeah. So we started with 8 hens back in 2021, and now I'm up to 25. There's actually a scientific terminology for that. It's called chicken math. You'll have to look into it. Flying into work, it's not really flying into work. It's just I am throwing shoes on, throwing my bag, hair's a mess, getting there, so I don't feel so guilty about getting that run in. And because I know about the mounds of work I'm going to have on my desk when I get there.
So this might be a bit blasphemous to say, but do you ever consider eating the chickens, or are they purely pets?
So we haven't eaten any of them. It's mostly layers. I do have 4 roosters that I'm very fond of. So, I guess if it came down to it, we could, but they're not really meat birds. But every single one of them is named. Every single one.
And how do you differentiate the chickens?
So I have a bunch of different chicken breeds. So like my barred Plymouth Rock is Roxanne, so some of them are pretty easy to, to tell. But, when you get to know them and you spend some time with them, it could be something that as little as the one has a little freckle underneath their eye, something like that.
TJ, does she spend more time with you or with the chickens?
Honestly, it's more with the chickens at this point. Unless we're doing a long run together, it's the chickens.
I've heard of people like running with their dogs on a leash. Would you ever do that with one of the chickens?
We actually would run from King Julian, the one rooster we have. Yeah, from King Julian, not with him.
Does he get vicious?
Only once in a while. He's an alpha. He's just doing his job. So for the most part, he's good. But we actually do have a broken, it's just the handle of a rake, and there's masking tape on it, and it says the Julian Be Good stick. We have had to use that.
Are you trained in the Julian Be Good stick as well, TJ?
Absolutely. When they go away on vacations and stuff, that stick is put to use for my safety.
Very impressive. Okay. So let's bring it back into running. We are, after all, a running podcast. Let's go maybe into training a bit. So Bethany, I'll start with you. What did your training look like, we'll say, on a week-to-week basis? I'm curious how many easy runs, what type of workouts, just what was the overall structure leading up to the Muleskinner race?
So I've been so successful with using Runners Connect to design my training plans for me. They did my first 50, they did my first 100-miler, and of course they did this one. So generally I run 5 days a week. I have 2 rest days. One of them I will use as a full rest day, which is the day after my long run. And the other rest day I will actually use as a strength training day. To build up the quads, ankle stability, you name it. I'm not a spring chicken. But with the 50-miler, I was introduced in the first training plan with the 50-miler with the back-to-back long run. And I found that to be really, really good to prepare the body, get that time on the legs, and also to prevent injury. Because, you can go out and run a 30-mile run or a 35-mile run, but then you just open yourself up to injury. So these back-to-back long runs were really, really key in that. And then also, the sprinkling of getting the runs a little different. I loved this one run where I would go from a warm-up to hill repeats and then thrown into a taper. I just loved it because I was doing something different constantly. Because when you're out there and it's just miles of easy pace, you forget why you love running sometimes. So sprinkling those little workouts that kind of have you doing a little bit of everything really keep you going.
And were you doing those kind of workouts before you started working with RC, or was that really Coach Rory who started to sprinkle those in?
Yeah, no, that's definitely Runners Connect. When I was training, I started off with half marathons where I was just building up the distance every week, and every run was exactly the same. There was no speed, there was no tempo. And my first marathon, a buddy of mine, Gary Hackenberg, had designed my marathon training plan. He had gone to Boston so many times, and he knew how to design a training plan. And so that would be my first introduction to, but it was speed, tempo, long run, easy runs. But with Runners Connect, they'll throw a bunch of stuff in a single workout, and that really breaks up the monotony.
Do you have a single favorite workout that you did in the entire training block?
You know what? They always, Runners Connect does this, and I love it because I'm a very stubborn person, but I like to be challenged. They always seem to end my training block with after, you do your longest run and I have my rest day, they set me out on, 10, 12 miles at a certain pace. And then they do this, run the next 3 as fast as you can. I'm guessing blah, blah, blah. And I'm always like, I got to beat it. It's like the GPS in the car where you're driving somewhere, you just got to beat it. So I think that might be one of my favorites because despite being so tired, it's the end of the training cycle, you're about to go into a taper, you just really dig and you can pull it off. And it's an amazing feeling to close out that training cycle that way.
And did you feel like it gave you a bit of a mental edge? You could push that way when your legs are tired?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And you use that in race day. You can use that in race day.
And what were you able to run, I'm curious, for 3 miles all out at the end of your run?
Oh, I was in the 7s. Yeah, I think it was roughly around 7:30 was the pace, for those 3 miles. Yeah.
And how does that compare to during your 50K? Would you be somewhere around a 9-minute mile, I guess?
So my overall pace was a 9:30, but of course that includes all the stopping and stuff. So I think my moving pace was a 9:17. I locked into an 8:45 and just held it as long as I could.
Yeah. Well, pretty impressive. Enough for the win.
Mm-hmm.
And TJ, I know that you have a very different training schedule, and it sounds like one that involves a lot more strength training than your mom. So what does that look like week to week?
So Runners Connect had me on 6 days a week of running. I thought it would be a great idea to have one day off of running to do my leg days. But that really didn't happen all the time. I would throw my leg days in after like an easy run, which would also be, pretty interesting. But majority of my running, they had me do like 2 speed workouts a week. I would obviously have my longer run, and then there would be some sort of tempo, and then like a, fun run, junk run, whatever you want to call it. And then usually at night I go to the gym for about 2 hours, 4 to 5 days a week for strength training too. So like what they call like a bro split. So your chest and triceps, back and biceps, shoulders and accessories, and then your leg day. Which was also, I think, really did help me during running by keeping me all together, keeping my tendons strong and things like that.
So how many how many hours of training do you think you were doing in a week, all in? So counting the running, stretching, gym work, everything.
Are we talking at like the very end of the training cycle with the most high amount of mileage as well?
Let's say peak training, yeah.
Oof, that's probably rolling up on like, I would say 20 hours a week. It was getting pretty crazy at some points in time.
So let's put that together. 20 hours a week. You're also a full-time student and helping out at the shop. Is that right?
Yes.
Crazy.
So
were you able to get enough sleep in that training block?
Absolutely not. There was a lot of caffeine involved, but we got it done, which is good.
So are you somebody who likes to take in your morning coffee before you run, or do you head out the door and then have it afterwards?
I need to have my coffee to mentally prepare myself for 26 miles of running in the dark with the headlamp on. But once I have my coffee, I'm in a lot better of a mood. So then it makes it more fun.
What about you, Bethany? Are you somebody who needs caffeine in the morning, or are you mostly just going?
Oh, no, I do. It's for the safety of the family members in the household. I'm not a morning person. So the roosters, will get me up. That's actually better than an alarm clock. But yeah, I need that cup of coffee. In fact, my husband sets it up so that it's programmed, so it's ready by the time I come out of bed. And then, just a cup of coffee, then I'm human. And then we can get everything done to get out the door.
Mm-hmm.
It sounds like everybody in the family benefits from the coffee. I know you mentioned your husband runs as well in our other chats. Is he also a big coffee drinker for his runs?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Cool. So coming back to those gym workouts, because 2 hours, that's a lot. We're huge advocates at RC of fitting in strength training. I really believe that it helps to keep you strong and healthy and a lot more resilient over longer distances, the marathon and up. But that's definitely quite a bit of work to be putting in. How do you think that it translated to running such a long endurance event, such as a 50K?
I think it went into physical and mental benefit for me. I've been lifting for about 2.5, 3 years now. I started post my senior year of high school, but I was also doing like body weight and calisthenics during cross country. And one thing I've kind of learned is to run with my arms when like running up a hill and things like that. And my arms are relatively strong, so it does help. But I think a lot of my workouts and stuff, I will like go to failure on most of my sets. And, paralleled with running, when you could push yourself mentally to consistently go to failure and push past it, it builds that mental strength that I definitely really needed to push through like the last 15 miles, I'd say.
Do you feel like the easy runs are almost harder? Because I do know there's such a mentality in lifting of training to failure, hypertrophy, whereas in running, such a big component of endurance is being able to get those easy recovery runs in outside of your workouts.
Yeah, I would almost feel like I'm not doing enough, or I'm being lazy when I'm going out. I would never go to the gym unless I definitely needed like a deload week for my nervous system or something like that, and just kind of go easy. It just doesn't register. So going out for like a 6 to 8 mile run, let's say, they would have me run like an 8:20 to a 9 minute mile, which was on the easier side for me. Would be like almost like all right, I'm putting in a podcast, the Runners Connect, Run to the Top podcast. I'm going to listen to that while I run.
Good plug.
Or some kind of like more relaxed music to keep me from wanting to floor it their whole run. You know what I mean? But long term, it's kind of cool to see the difference in hypertrophy training and strength training versus running. And the balancing of the two was honestly the most enjoyable part of this whole training cycle. Whether I was limiting how many days a week I was working out, or changing the type of exercises I was doing to help me translate to my running, especially later in the training cycle.
And were you doing more lower body stuff as you were starting to run, or moving it around? How did that maybe look a little bit different versus just training for strength?
Yeah, lower body started to fade more towards the end of it because of the way I do train my legs. I train pretty heavy. I weigh around 200 pounds now, so at my peak during the training cycle, I was squatting in the 300 to 400 range and deadlifting around there as well. But that does take a toll on your legs and makes them very sore. So you can never follow that up with a speed workout or like a long run. So my runs would start to suffer. So it'd be more of like legs would be like an accessory, or I'd be spending more time stretching over actual strength training at a certain point. Just because I didn't want to take away from the more valuable runs that I would need towards the end, like my longer runs and my like longer tempo runs and stuff, to really build that endurance.
And just to be a little bit provocative, did Coach Rory ever come to you and say, hey, TJ, maybe we should down the squat and not be doing 300, 350 pound max squats?
So
you didn't know about
No, none of the Runners Connect coaches. I didn't share I briefly shared the fact in like the introductory part that you fill out.
They're going to know now.
They are going to know now. I didn't really tell them the kind of working out. I think they might have thought it was more like I do push-ups at home instead of benching like 3 plates and stuff like that at the gym. It's more an abstract hobby for most runners to be doing stuff like that, and I really enjoy it. I know some people don't like the gym, but I didn't want to lose all the stuff I've been building in the gym, but I also refused to lose to my mom in this race, so it was a really difficult juggling act.
And do you think going even longer, if you have aspirations to do, say, a 100K or 50 miler, does that give your mom the edge, or do you still think you can edge her out?
I think if I really put my mind to it, I might be able to win at 100. But she's dangerously close, so it's like I got to put all of it into my training. I did learn a lot, though, about how the lifting, how like the recovery process from it plays into my runs. And I didn't really have that start to click until we entered the fall. So the whole summer it was like they were battling against each other. But going into like the last part of my races, I start to figure out how I would space them out, or like which exercises I could do for my upper body or my lower body that wouldn't really negatively impact the speed workout. And by the end of it, they actually start to play off of each other, and it was really effective. So most of my training was me fighting myself. And then I start to get along and to try to merge the two together. And it was really, really fun.
As much as I love to lift, I have never had the experience of benching 3 plates and then going for a run. So for those who are unfamiliar, which is probably 99.99% of our audience, what does that feel like?
It's very interesting. Half of it's trying not to die. It's like the closest thing I can probably equivalent it to the running world would be waking up and running out your door as hard as you could for about 20 to 30 seconds while holding your breath. But it was a super cool accomplishment. I hit that earlier on this year, and I've been able to maintain my strength, which in previous races I've done, it's always decreased by a good percentage, and I've had to rebuild. So, but 3 plates is definitely it's not something in the normal running world, I would say.
No, definitely not. It's hard to balance the two. Do you find your max lifts, do you try to maintain those, or does it become secondary once you're in that running training block?
My body, and I think it's because I'm 20 years old, I'm very fortunate and I recover fast. I was on my nutrition and vitamin intake and things like that, mostly courtesy of my mother's advice. So going into it, I'm not usually a 1 rep max kind of person. I feel like that's very prone to injury. Just because the tendons may not be as used to it. But my lower rep range is so the 4 to 6 range. Definitely in my lower body, it went the other way. I probably lost, 20% of what I was. But my upper body remained virtually unaffected and actually progressed in strength a small amount. So, again, difficult balancing the two of them, but ultimately was really fruitful.
Yeah, and I think a lot of runners have a tendency to do lighter weight, higher rep, but really you're building that type of muscular endurance when you're running. So I think that kind of high weight, lower rep range really works muscles in a way you don't get through your workouts.
100%.
Did you feel like at the end of the race, the weightlifting came into play at all, or do you think the mileage is more related?
Definitely the mileage, but I was running at a certain point with my, I felt like my upper body was playing a huge role. My older runs that I did, so like some of the half marathon trail races with my hydration pack, mine was the 1.5 liter, I believe. So, I mean, it weighs a fair bit when it was full, and I obviously have all my snacks and got my phone in my hand, I got my headphones on, so I'm carrying a small amount of weight, but over the course of 50, it definitely made a difference. But my upper body, it wasn't something I really noticed compared to my earlier times of running, where it was running with the 8 pounds. It felt like I was running with the weight of the world on my shoulders, you know what I mean? So I think ultimately that kind of mental distraction, or that road bump that I would bump into normally, just didn't play a factor because of the running. But ultimately my legs is what brought me home, and it's what started the race and finished the race. So the mileage that I put in was definitely more important.
And what was that total mileage, if you had to guesstimate?
Oh, man. My longest week, I think I hit 79 miles for the week, but I was averaging about 50 to 60 for,
A couple months.
yeah, I would say probably close to 5 months, 4 or 5 months.
And how does that compare for you, Bethany?
So his maximum weekly mileage was definitely higher than mine. I think mine got close to like 60. But they do park you at that 40 to 55 mile range for a few months just to get the legs used to it. That kind of mileage just really prepares the legs, prepares the body, the mind, for being out there for a nice long run.
And you mentioned you were doing some double long runs, so I guess 2 days in a row.
Yes.
What proportion of your mileage do you think that made up, and what did those long runs look like?
So the back-to-back long runs, because of the way that I requested my schedule, I would do the shorter one on a Saturday and the longer one on Sunday. And then Monday is the rest day, where sometimes people flip them. They'll do the longer one day and then the shorter one the next. But, doing the shorter one for me was good. So it would, they're not the same. So the one is significantly lower than the other. So it could be like a 15 or 16 mile run, and then the next day is like, in the 20s. But it would account for a huge chunk of the weekly mileage for sure.
Yeah, so
I would say definitely over 60%.
So what kind of mileage range are we looking at, both for the shorter one and then for that longer one on the Sunday?
So I think it maxed out at like 36 or 37 between the 2 days.
36, 37 cumulative, like between the two?
Between the two. Yeah.
Okay, that's pretty significant. So you're looking at peaking around 60, 65 miles, I think you said. So that's half your weekly mileage.
Yeah.
And how do you feel coming back from that after the Monday? Do you feel like your legs are recovered, or is it really about carrying over that fatigue?
No, it's still carrying the fatigue. So Monday would be a rest day, and Monday, your legs just feel like concrete blocks. And then even waking up Tuesday, you're like, oh, but then, I would have a speed run or something different where I'm using like some fast twitch muscle fibers. So you don't feel like it's a nice break from that easy pace where you're just hours and hours and hours locked into a pace. So it would get the blood flow into the legs. It would be something different. So that Tuesday run would be a reset for the week.
And what about fueling wise? I guess both for training and for the race. What type of food did you take in, and what was your fueling strategy in terms of fluids?
So I had to, look at my fueling strategy. My 100-miler, right around like mile 70, I couldn't like chew and swallow food anymore. It was tough. But, over the past year, I would say that I can no longer consume super sweet things anymore. I can't do those goos and that kind of stuff. So I do like gels. I do like some liquid calories, things that are easy to chew and swallow. But fueling every 3 miles was the key. You never want to get to that state where you feel like death, because you just can't get out of it. You could, you just can't, there's no reversing it. So I would, you know, count how many times I'm going to hit 3 miles, and I would carry that, and then at the drop bag I would reload, and every 3 miles I would take something in. Whether it was like the spring energy gels, I can do those because they're not too sweet. The scratch gummies, I can do those. We have I've done those. There's not a lot of calories in those. I wish they made something more than 70 calorie gel. But yeah, I can't do those super sweet things anymore.
Yeah, so did you find it was mostly gels, or are you taking in mostly solid foods?
I would say it's going to be probably half and half, if not mostly gels, because I do use Tailwind just for the electrolytes, and you get some calories that way too. It's the chewing and swallowing while you're running. It's okay at first, but later on in the race, it's not pleasant. It's like you're eating something you don't want to, where you just don't want to swallow it.
Is there any food you really look forward to while you're running?
In a race setting, if it's colder out, when I'm done, I want something super salty. Or even in summertime, something super salty. That's what I crave after I'm done running. I can't look at anything sweet. I don't want to look at, cookies, Oreos, nothing like that.
TJ, I see you nodding. I'm sure between all the weights, and you mentioned a 200-pound frame running an ultra, you've got to be taking in a lot of food. So what does that look like?
I felt like Michael Phelps during this training cycle. It was bad. Some of these days I felt like I was like a food buffet, like those professional eaters where they're like 100 hot dogs in 5 minutes. A lot of my diet consisted of protein, obviously, for the whole gym bro thing. A lot of electrolytes too. Anything, lots of whole foods, fruits and vegetables. Not as much carbs in the beginning, but towards the end when it was just I need food to keep myself together like glue. Anything that was edible at that point was food. As for the race though, the gels weren't something I despised. Now it might be different. I had about I think it was 15 to 20 gels over the course of that race. So I had Tailwind in my hydration pack. And the most interesting part about the whole thing is they didn't have my drop bag at the turnaround point because I got there earlier than they thought I would. So I had to run 6 miles on empty, which ultimately did impact me during the race. I was lucky enough to right myself later on, but running in the negative was not good for me. And I kind of saw how important fuel is past that marathon point because of that. But I would have to say the electrolyte pills and the capsules you can take were really, really beneficial to me. And I have never used them before prior to that race. They kind of kept me together.
So you really threw out the old adage, nothing new on race day.
No. 100%. I mean, it was, give or take, right? I had to gamble a little bit because I've never done anything in the 50. And I could tell you what I would want to eat during a half marathon or maybe a 50K, but that was completely different. And by the end of it, I don't think I've eaten anything really too sweet since then, if maybe in small amounts, because I couldn't stomach it anymore.
And were you just doing purely gels, or were you taking in some solids along with that? I think you said 15 to 20 gels.
Yeah, so we had the gels with us, all different brands. Some of them were really good. Some of them I was dreading eating. There's the awesome sauce one. I forget who makes that. That was my favorite. And then there was the one that tasted like marshmallows. So that one was good. Then there was one that was very similar to oatmeal, which I didn't eat. And I was counting on it for 300 calories, but I took one little sip of that, and I was like, that's not happening. The Tailwind is so clutch. That's one of my favorites probably. And then we have little gummies. That's our go-to for our long runs. So all different brands of gummy bears and stuff like that. And during the turnaround point, it was total improvisation because I didn't have any drop bag to refuel. So it was a Gatorade bottle in my hand, orange, which I'm not a big Gatorade person. They make me nauseous, but I needed electrolytes. And I grabbed an entire handful of gummy bears. So she sees me running past her after the turnaround point with a Gatorade in my hand, gummy bears, and essentially a full sprint because I wanted to get my stuff so I can actually eat. So, and then the rest of the race was like oranges when I ran across them, and then like some actually like chips, like kettle chips with a lot of salt on them because, again, the salt at the end was just awesome. But other than that, I don't think my stomach is ever going to respect me ever again after that day. But you just kind of have to eat what you can after a certain point, which I never thought would happen. I saw it during her 100, but having to deal with it firsthand was certainly interesting.
And did you feel that way in training, or was this really the first time your gut had to take in fuel that way?
The longest I got up to for training mileage was the 50K I did during training. And I think I had around 8 or 9 gels. And I also had the Tailwind in my hydration pack with a solid breakfast before. So I really didn't have to like scramble for any food, or I didn't like lose an appetite or anything just because of the distance. It really didn't get difficult for stomaching stuff again until probably after like 35, 40, when obviously it's most crucial because you're running on empty. But, you know, I was just being really stubborn.
Yeah. I'd love to hear from each of you what the post-race meal was. I know, Bethany, you mentioned you couldn't take anything sweet. So what was it that you were really craving getting in afterwards?
So we had to, when we crossed that finish line and we won, we had to grab our drop bags, get in the van, and drive to the hotel because checkout is at a certain time. And we both wanted to shower because it's a 2.5 hour drive, and we did not want to drive smelling like that. So we flew there, showered, and we got out on the road. And we live close to Hamilton. We're in Muleskinner Township, but in Hamilton, they've got some of the best Mexican restaurants. So we stopped at El Mariachi Loco and got these really big taco salads and a big bowl of guacamole with the chips, and yeah.
It was not pretty what followed after that. It was, we ate a lot of food, and then I went to sleep.
What time of day are we talking here?
The race started 5 a.m.
At 5 a.m.
We got done around like 12 to 1 o'clock. The hotel, we already had extended checkout, so they were less happy with us getting there and our slow pace of walking inside and up the steps, mostly because we couldn't at that point. Then we got home, I'd say, probably around, or into Hamilton, probably around 5 o'clock. And that's when we sat down, ate, and then immediately sun goes down and my head hit the pillow.
So we're probably like 7 or 8 p.m. You're out cold?
Yep, absolutely.
And what's a normal bedtime when you're waking up at 4 a.m.?
I would love to tell everyone that it's 10 o'clock, but it's never that easy.
He's 20 years old.
So some nights, you know, it could be 11:30, 12 o'clock. Sometimes it's 9 o'clock. I mean, it really just depends. If I'm not tired, I can't sleep. So, and I also have, like, the worst part about me going to the gym by far, and it's a habit I want to break, but I enjoy it too much, is my pre-workout and my caffeine. And unfortunately, the gym is usually around 4 o'clock for me. So if I take too much of the said caffeine, I'm not sleeping until at least 11. So 300 milligrams of caffeine is a lot more than just 1 cup of coffee, but it really does get me through my workouts. So it's, you know, give and take.
Bethany, are you a little bit better with the sleep, or do you find that you're stretched too?
When I'm done, I'm done. So, like, you know, we get dinner done, dishes, got to lock up the chickens, make sure the kids take their showers and stuff like that. By 10 o'clock, I'm done. Like, tell them the kids, look, shut your light off. Don't stay up too late to my daughter reading a book. I'm out. Yeah, no. Done.
This sounds like the difference between racing in your 20s versus when you've got a few more races under your belt.
Yeah.
A lot of my the long runs we've shared together over the past couple years, she's full of energy, well rested, and I'm unfortunately hungover, getting ready to run 20 miles with my mother. So sometimes it can be very interesting, but it's always a lot of fun.
Do you find that that's a good mother-son bonding, to be doing those early morning runs completely hungover?
Absolutely.
Yeah, we used to call it Sunday Fun Day Run Day, and we would go out to the trails in over by Badstow, out in the Pine Barrens. It's a wonderful trail system, and we would just go out there and just talk to each other for hours. I mean, be goofy, sing songs. Yeah, I mean, that time that we've had together is incredible.
It's a whole lot of fun.
Our relationship, I'm sure there's probably a ton of jealous moms out there, but the relationship I have with my son is incredible because we share that activity together and we can talk and about everything while we're out there in the middle of the woods.
How much of your mileage on a weekly basis do you think you were able to do together?
This training cycle, not too much. I think we might have had like a handful of runs together, just because of work and life. I cover for my parents on the weekends, so they can have some more time off. Unfortunately, that's taken away our Sunday Fun Day Run Day. So a couple like the night runs that we had similar mileage and similar pace to. But for previous races, like my first 50K, which is my first ultra, a lot of our runs were together. Majority of our long runs, because she kind of put my training plan together for me. And a lot of those, I mean, I think we got up to like 24, maybe a 26-mile run. Mm-hmm. So a lot of those were, interesting for the first half for me personally, shaking out the cobwebs a little bit. But I mean, talking about all sorts of things while we're out there running in the middle of nowhere. So it's a lot more enjoyable than just running by yourself.
All right, I'm going to have a little fun and put you on the spot knowing that both will listen to this, but who makes the better training plans, Coach Bethany or Coach Rory?
You can be honest, dude. You can be honest. I overtrained you with that 50K.
Is that true? Did Mom overtrain you?
Oh, well, it was ridiculous.
I had no idea what I was doing.
No, I think I hit like at least 77. I think maybe we were pushing 80 miles leading into a 50K. Yeah, my body was nuked, absolutely nuked. And then we were going into 4,000 feet of vert. So my body learned real quick that you don't always need to overtrain. So let's say logistically, Coach Rory, but based on like spatial awareness for myself right now and her arm length, I'll go with Coach Bethany.
Good answer, but 80-mile peak weeks. Bethany, didn't you say you're peaking at 60? Did you prescribe him like 25% more mileage than yourself?
So this was a 50K. This was before we started using Runners Connect for training plans. So all I had was what I did for a marathon. And when you really don't understand like what ultra training looks like, you think, okay, well, a marathon's this distance, this is this. That means I need to run a lot more. And that was my thought process. And so that first training plan for the 50-miler that Runners Connect gave me, I was very doubtful throughout the training cycle because I was like, I'm not hitting enough mileage. I have all these easy runs. I wasn't used to running that slow either. That took a long time to adjust. They parked me, put like bumpers up. I was parked at like a 10-10, and it actually kind of hurt to run like that. But then you kind of get used to it by changing your gait a little bit to adjust. So, using Runners Connect, it definitely opened up my eyes to it's not always more mileage. It's not always faster. It's not always hard runs. I learned to appreciate what an easy pace looks like. With my previous running, my easy paces were at like an 8:45-9. And it just doesn't put the time on your legs. And, it opens you to injuries and stuff. So I had no idea what I was doing.
And this is exactly what Coach Haley was telling me on another podcast, because she recently transitioned to the longer trails and ultra from a long time at marathoning. And she was talking about how surprised she was just how little mileage you actually need doing the longer distances, and that she's basically doing the same as when she was marathoning.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, my 50-mile training plan and my 100-mile training plan were really not that much different.
So, aside from maybe not overdoing the mileage, if there's anybody else either who's new to ultra running or maybe thinking about dabbling in it, do you have any advice?
Just kind of relax. I mean, if you just relax and just don't lose the joy that you have in it, go out there, relax, and just, maybe find someone to run with, or just, learn more about yourself. And that's the thing is, people hear ultra and they immediately get scared of it, or, you know, it overwhelmed by it. And it's really not like that. You're backing off your pace and you're just going out there and enjoying it. And then, you know, once you get over that, then you can start pushing yourself a little bit.
What about you, TJ?
I'd say most important for it, and probably just in life in general, is find people that challenge you. You know, I got into running very early on just for the fitness aspect, and I've had my mom and stepfather kind of pulling me along into further and further races because I don't want to get left behind. And now it's kind of sprouted into something I really do enjoy. But if I were to go back in time 4 years ago and tell my 16-year-old self that I'd be running a 50-mile race, winning a 50-mile race, and also having my mom win it with me would be something I wouldn't believe. So you got to have some faith in yourself and the people around you, and just challenge yourself and push yourself to be better every day.
I think a pretty cool accomplishment. Bethany, I know you already talked a little bit about Atlantic City, but any other big goals on the horizon?
So besides running the BQ in Atlantic City, I wanted to test out. So most of our runs and races where we're at it's flat. It's really flat. So I actually, you know, I follow some of the best ultra runners and the sky running and stuff, and I'm going to try some hard races with some serious vert, and that's looking at this World's End 100K, see if we can get in. It fills up pretty fast. So it's going to be completely different from what we're used to. It is so flat here, so flat, pancake flat.
So does that mean both of you?
I'm getting slowly suckered into it. She's withering down my defenses every day that goes on. At first, it was like, that's absolutely not happening. And then I'm like, yeah, maybe. So it's probably going to be, yes, you give me a week.
Well, now you're on air on a podcast, basically being told that you're doing 100K.
I guess now I have to do it. I've been completely backed into this. So I guess we're both doing this World Ends, or I'd be doing a 100-mile race. I got to figure out which one.
And when does this 100K take place?
So it opens up December 7th at a certain time. Like I said, it fills up fast. It takes place May 31st. The cool thing about World's End 100K is because it's such a difficult race, it is actually a Western States qualifier, even though it's not 100 miles.
Is that a goal of yours as well, to run Western States?
Yes.
That would be a pretty cool year to run Western States and Boston. That would
be really, really awesome. But yeah, because Boston would be first and then Western States would come after that. Yeah, that would be so cool. So cool.
What about you, TJ? Would you run Western States if you qualified?
I mean, she's going to need a running partner. And as you can see, I don't think the word no works when it comes to running with my mother at this point. So if there were the opportunity to present itself and we're fortunate enough to cut underneath the qualifying time, then absolutely, yeah.
There's a lot of runners I look up
to as well.
Your mom basically volunteers you for different races and then you go and win them?
Well, what she does is she goes out and does them first, and then I hear it for like 6-7 months, so then I have to go out and do something similar just to, kind of catch up. So it's like I said, she's pulling me along, because you were at 50 miles when I was at 50K, and then she went out and did 100 mile earlier this year, so I had to at least get half of that. So now it's going to slowly creep up to me doing 100 miles, I think.
I look forward to bringing you back on the show when you're running, say, 48 hours? What's the next level after that?
Oh yeah. Man.
I mean, after that 100, I don't know if I would, that might actually be my limit. I mean, I've been pushing limits for a few years now, but that was, I was a dumpster fire. Like those last 15 miles, it was something. I mean, I know what I did right and I know what I did wrong and I know where I could improve, but I don't know about a 48-hour one. I ran for 21 hours and 51 minutes. That's what it took me to clear 100. I don't know if I would want to.
I've never been on foot for more than 5 hours, so that sounds unfathomable to me.
Yeah. Well, you know how like when you're driving and you're tired and you can kind of almost like doze off while you're driving a car? Believe it or not, you can do that while running. and I found that out.
Pretty cool. Pretty cool. Well, I'm excited to hear how those races go. Bethany, I hope you'll keep me in the loop on Atlantic City as well as how the 100K goes. But best of luck to both of you, and thank you so much for coming on and sharing, I guess, a joint victory.
Yes.
Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you so much for having us on. Yep.
Awesome. This was great.